You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode down off Automobile Alley in Oklahoma City today with Brian Winkler to talk about design, advertising, just all of that cool stuff, all the colors that you see on cool cans around the city. A lot of them probably been done by Brian and his team here at Robot House. And I think when we first met, I just loved the backstory of Robot House and Futurama. I watched that, like, it was on at 5 o'clock every time I came home from school, so I watched Futurama a lot. So Bender was just the greatest. And so many funny things. It's still going, which is a good thing. But thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I'm looking, it's been good to catch up. Looking forward to hearing some more stories about the cool things you do. There's probably a lot of people listening that have seen your work, but like most ad agencies, they don't know who does it, right? Other than the people paying you to do it. So before we dive into that stuff, we just had the Addies, which is a huge thing in your industry. Tell us about that, and tell us, I guess, for people who don't know what the Addies are, tell us what it is first, and then how successful you guys have been, because you've been very successful. Don't hold back.
The Addies, every February, they celebrate, the Ad Club, Oklahoma City Ad Club celebrates creative from the previous year. Anything that was produced and showed up in the world January through December of the year before. So they always have judges from outside of the state and even the region judge, and pretty much most every agency and creative in town enters into the show. In fact, this year I think they had a record number of entries, like maybe 1,100 entries, something like that. So the judges had their hands full, and we do well. And that's having been entering for years, and you kind of know, okay, what's our strongest stuff. We don't enter a ton. We pick and choose, favorites, some sentimental, some stuff that we feel might click. The judges tend to have really good pedigree in terms of their experience and just knowing the context of the kind of work that's done in a market like Oklahoma City. It's a lot of mostly local clients, even though some of them are bigger, but mostly local. So we're not working on multi-zillion-dollar Super Bowl ads for the most part.
Not yet.
So we did well. We won 20 awards. I believe 10 gold, 3 silver, 7 bronze. COOP Aleworks is our biggest client, and so we did well with some of the new beers that we designed for them this past year, as well as Sonic Hard Seltzer, which they launched last year, which is kind of cool for us, even though we're essentially playing in Sonic's toy box in terms of their brand standards and everything. But I don't know if there's another design shop in the world that can say that they essentially helped create an alcoholic brand for a international fast food company. So that was really cool to be a part of that. And really fun thing with the Addies was they have the Jeff Fontana Special Award for Humor. I think they've had that since maybe 2000, and that was named after an actor, writer, director, Jeff Fontana, who was a big personality in town, did a lot of advertising, a lot of voiceover work, and passed away in his early 40s, and so they named it after him. This was we won it this year for a radio commercial that I produced, and for Renaissance Salon and Spa, and I've been working with them for almost 20 years. It was the Robot House's 7th Fontana, my career 9th Fontana. I went to at my previous agency. And since they've only given out maybe 23 Fontanas. It's a pretty good track record.
Pretty good ratio.
And everybody's, not everybody. I occasionally somebody will, because I'm known for this kind of work, and so somebody, occasionally will say like, oh, they need to name that after you, and I'm like, I'm not dead yet. I don't, I can't win my own award. I'm greedy enough that keep it coming until at least I retire, But no, I'm just good. Honoring Jeff and the folks that came before me, and again, we were talking a minute ago about how exciting it is to go to the Addies and see a ton of people I don't know. I'm 51 and I've been in the local industry for almost 30 years. And to see all the young folks, that 30 years ago, all of my friends, when we were all 21, we graduated college and, they all left town, because there was
nothing here.
There was nothing here. Yeah. A hot Friday night in Oklahoma City was, Chili's and Blockbuster, so to see this great, young, vibrant, creative community that's really grown over the last, especially 15, 20 years. I love it. It's just, it excites me and it energizes me in my work, to see that, there's just so much cool stuff going on in town.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? Like, do you think it's a product of just kind of like Oklahoma City being a cooler place to live now, and also kind of a product of, you mentioned there were so many entries this year, a lot more than there had been in the past. Do you think that's because during, I guess, COVID, people were working from home, and now you got more people working on side projects that have more access to technology to just think, hey, I'll just design something?
To a certain extent, I think it's reflective of the community itself, in that, again, 30 years ago, there were a couple of big agencies, not a whole lot in terms of community, not a whole lot in terms of opportunity, really. And these days, I think a couple of big agencies are still around, but there's really been a kind of a medium level and then a smaller level. There are four of us at Robot House, and there are even fewer than some that are fewer than that. 1-2 person shop, things like that. I think it's that there's been more opportunity, and more creatives being in town. And I also do think over the past year or so, everybody kind of, for the most part, there was some struggle and some unknown at the beginning of the pandemic. But then a lot of folks that I know did kind of end 2020 in a not too bad a shape. And then last year, for us specifically, doing a whole lot of the Sonic stuff, Sonic Hard Seltzer stuff, that was a big, that helped us have a really great year. But we stayed really busy. We picked up some new clients. Most everybody I know in the local community has stayed really busy over the last year. So I think part of it is that. Part of it was 2021 kind of being that sort of course correction year. So kind of that, along with just a lot of new faces doing a lot of new things. And that showed in the results of the show, a lot of newer agencies winning the big awards, which I think was there's kind of a sea change in the city. And I like that because I think that feels a lot more authentic to Oklahoma City. We're not ever going to be Dallas. And that was the thing 30 years ago, there was it was always, we kind of apologized for being from Oklahoma City, right? We're not Dallas, we're not Kansas City, we're not Austin, we're not somewhere cooler, and I think one of the exciting things as we've grown, as we've become, 2022 Oklahoma City and further out, that there is an authenticity. when Oklahoma City stopped trying to be something else and really just embrace just our weird selves, right? I always, whenever I'm explaining, I was on a Zoom a couple of weeks ago with some folks out of New York, and they don't follow NBA, so they don't really know about the Thunder. They did, everybody always kind of goes to like the musical, Oklahoma, and that's about it, And in fact, they were like, are you in Omaha? And I'm like, no, it's the other O city in the Midwest. Explaining kind of the culture to them, I said, we're Toby Keith, but we're also the Flaming Lips.
Yeah.
And both are authentic products of the local community, know. And I think for so long it was very much sort of like Cattleman's Steakhouse, and God bless Cattleman's, are awesome. But there was this very one-dimensional, Charles Barkley riding a horse, kind of thing. And, from a creative and being in the creative community, all this time, we're weird. There's a really sort of unique, sort of original thought, I think, that's specific to, and I think anywhere local has that quirk, has that local quirk. But I think that there's something about the culture here that really does bring out a lot of interesting creativity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, because perfect, right? It's Toby Keith to Flaming Lips. You can't get two different people, different types and groups of people, which is really cool, because that breeds creativity. And it's more fun to market to that.
Yeah.
All right. And than it is just to, I'm going to mail it in every day and this is what we want because this is what we've always done. Going back though, you mentioned Super Bowl, because I literally watched the Super Bowl for the commercials, and that's the only reason I watched it.
Sure.
And I'm sure it's the same reason you watched it too, because you're in the industry. What were your kind of reviews on the Super Bowl commercials, and obviously that halftime show that everyone's raving about? Everyone who was born in the 90s or earlier was raving about. Everyone since has no idea, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, anybody who was like, "Oh, best Super Bowl, halftime ever," and I'm like, Prince, Prince in the Rain. You can't. I don't think that'll ever be topped for me. Honestly, it's sort of I've never felt so pandered to as a 51-year-old. Kind of. I was in maybe the first third of Gen X, right? So it kind of. The big budget stuff always sort of feels, there's the Portlandia sketch, put a bird on it. And with these big brands, it's like, put a celebrity on it. There's right. Just throw, there's not much in terms of like a concept. It's just like throw a celebrity. Sometimes it's, I think the one kind of keeping up with the Joneses with Tommy Lee Jones and Rashida Jones and Leslie Jones and Tom Jones singing It's Not Unusual, right. I thought that was clever, and so stuff like that, when it's unexpected. And I think that's, there's a whole lot that was not unexpected. It's a whole lot of stuff that just felt very much like we got a big budget. We can,
who can we get for the amount of money that we have to pay that they should go follow this because this is awesome.
Yeah. And then it's like what 80s songs, Holding Out for a Hero by Bonnie Raitt. Sure. Yeah. Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me. Yeah. The 50-year-olds love that because they've got spending money now, right. And so that kind of stuff, I kind of rolled my eyes at because it's just what we do here. And again, we don't do Super Bowl commercials here, but it's a success if we create something unique. That's always the goal. Yeah. And not everything, obviously, everything's kind of been done, but if we can put something out there that is unexpected, and again, authentic, that's really kind of where success lies for us, because that cuts through the sameness. And generally my Super Bowl reaction tends to be there's a whole lot of sameness, or there's a whole lot of half-baked ideas that they just throw a lot of money into. And so overall, I'm generally not super impressed.
They've got to be like, it's kind of they got to be too PC now, and nobody takes risks anymore with that stuff, right? I mean, just sadly the culture that we live in, and people can't take a joke, or you got to be super careful. And if you've got a massive business with stockholders and all the rest of it, you aren't going to push the boat out a little bit, are you? Like some of the old Budweiser commercials where, I mean, everyone used to wait like, oh, what's Budweiser going to do this year, right? With it's the rubber floor one with the dog flies out the front door is one that always comes to mind, or the What's Up one that was just had, I think, me as a 10-year-old saying that to all of my friends. But I did see, I guess Coinbase did a kind of cool one, and I read something, their CEO tweeted out something the other day saying that like we had the go ahead to spend a bunch of money, but we didn't. So they just had their like old DVD style, the QR code, yeah. Right? And that was pretty good. Everyone was like trying to get that code running up to the TV. But yeah, we need to go back to the day, and just if people could just shut off their minds for a few hours and just let companies do whatever they want because it's hilarious. Let comedy follow rather than the rest of the world worrying about whatever issues are going on. Yeah, I mean,
I'm still an advocate for. I did this. Might have been before your time. There was a Quiznos did a campaign that was hated, rightfully so, because it was these like weird sort of furry potato creatures singing this god-awful song with like a banjo with this like screechy voices and like weird lips singing about Quiznos. And I loved it because it was like all I could think of being in the industry was, oh my God, how did they sell this? How did they came up with this thing, they sold it to to this big brand, knowing it was going to be anything's divisive these days, especially these days. This was 20 years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago. But it was just nuts. Yeah. And so I loved the ballsiness of it, that they were like, this is what we're going to do. And, and 80% of people hated it, but it got me, I ate a couple more Quiznos sandwiches after that, because I was like, I'm going to, this is a lot more interesting than Jared back when Jared was, was a free man before prison. I don't know if you know the Subway Jared, who lost a lot of weight. And now he's in prison for things that we'll talk about.
I did not know that. Our listeners may know that.
He's in prison for things that pre-recording that other acquaintance of mine is in prison for. Yeah. So not that I hang out with those people. No. It was a former coworker.
So this was the Subway Jared was the guy who ate Subway his entire life.
Right. And lost a lot of weight. Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah. And yeah.
You can Google that one if you want to.
Yeah. Not too deeply. But yeah, just anything that just sort of like surprises me. Right. Like it's so nice to just be surprised to have, and that's one of the things with the radio commercial that won our Fontana this year, was called Sick of You, and it was a Valentine's radio spot about for Valentine's 2021, so almost a year into the pandemic, and how the experience has brought you together, and your love is stronger than ever, and the best thing that you can do for your Valentine is give her a day away from your stupid face. And it was all just about how she loves you, but she's sick of you.
Yeah, she's sick of the sight of you.
Yeah, so and I loved writing that. I loved producing it because, when you kind of take somebody down a path and then you veer,
they're expecting something totally different.
Yeah. It's just, that's for me, that's like, right
up your street.
Yeah.
To that point then, I know, you're known for your humor, and you have clearly plenty of awards, to back that up. Like, where does that humor kind of come from? Were you just like, did you grow up wanting to be a comedian and funny growing up, or it's like, because that's not a skill it's a skill that's kind of developed, but people who are funny are generally funny from day one, right? Like the comedians out there, like they're pretty hilarious and they've always been funny. So it's kind of like a God-given talent rather than like a developed talent, right?
Right.
So where does that come from for you?
For me, I think I've got an older brother. Yeah. I'm classic middle kid. Okay. I'm the second of four, and my brother's a year and a half older, and he was I'm super close. I've got two younger sisters. We're all very close. He was sporty. He in high school he had Kevin Bacon footloose hair. All the girls loved him, and I was the chubby dork that read comic books and watched Doctor Who. So I think partly it was. Kind of that role as sort of, the second son, the middle child. And I think it's just to a certain extent, it's inherent in sort of your personality, that you're born with, I think, for me at least. I was never really the class clown. I was really kind of too nervous to get in trouble to to ever do anything like that. I did dress in drag in 8th grade for an acting class project that just brought the house down. So that was fun. But I think it's just I think seeing Star Wars was big for me when I was 6-7 years old, but seeing Airplane when I was 10 or 11, and that really informed a lot of my humor, especially when it comes to serious people saying ridiculous things, but saying it seriously. That's my sweet spot right there. Robert Stack, just being deadpan and that's, so that Simpsons, Futurama, like you said, naming my business after an obscure second season reference from Futurama, 30 Rock, and I watch a ton of stuff, but the stuff that I always go to, really is comedy, and I'm not a natural performer. So, I tried stand up once and was like, oh, it's not for me. I was part of a group that did a live Mystery Science Theater 3000-esque experience. Are you familiar with?
I am not. No.
So that's MST3K. It kind of bounced around from Comedy Central to Sci-Fi to Netflix, and now they're producing their own through Kickstarter. And it's the thing where they watch an old crummy movie, and it's a guy and two robot puppets, and they make fun of the movie during the movie, and that they've been doing it for 30 plus years.
Okay.
And so I need
to check this out.
Yeah, we did a couple, me and some local guys. Rod Lott was kind of the ringmaster. He's at Paycom now. Spencer Hicks, who's a local comedian. Greg Elwell, who's a food writer who writes for the Oklahoma Today. And Richard York, who I think joined Rod at Paycom. And we watched, it was through the Art Museum, their 10th anniversary, 2009 maybe, and it was they had Zardoz, the terrible Sean Connery 1973 weirdly post-apocalyptic maybe kind of thing where he's got this red bandolier and then kind of this sort of diapery sort of thing, and he's just hairy with a big ponytail, and it's terrible, and we had to watch it 8 times because you got to watch it and write notes for jokes, and then you got to watch it again and write more notes and start workshopping it, and then you start to rehearse it, and then we did it live, so we're in the front row. They're screening it at the art museum of all places, and we're telling these terrible off color, my parents were there, and I just at the beginning of, we all introduced ourselves, and I just had to apologize to my parents, you raised me better than this, so
don't judge me on the next hour.
Right. So that's about all I can do in terms of performance, because I had a script, and I wrote it, and so my best place is to be behind the scenes writing, and then especially with radio and stuff like that, working with really great talent who can just nail the tone that I'm going for.
Yeah, there's a serious talent in delivery, isn't it? Of a line and the certain way to make it funny and not funny, and I don't have that skill either. I've never tried to develop it, but people say, because I have an accent, I should. I'm like, maybe one day in another life. So classic middle child growing up. Oklahoma City, born and raised through and through?
St. Louis, actually. Okay. Born in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, another thing that feeds into it also is we moved here, I was 5.5 almost, 76, to Bethany, Oklahoma. And St. Louis is a very Catholic city. And it came from two very Catholic families. I've got like 23 cousins, you know. We lived across the street from the church that my parents grew up going to and got married in, you know. We moved to Bethany, Oklahoma, not a Catholic in sight. You know, it's at
Nazarene Central.
Nazarenes and Council Road Baptist, you know. And so, you know, and church people like came to our door, you know, offering candy, you know, if we came to their church, just weird stuff like that. And my mom's like, you know, I was like, can we go to, like, no, you're not going to go to, you know, you're going to go to our church where there's no candy and there's just suffering because we're Catholic. So I think, you know, and that's why, honestly, like one of my best friends, Elliot, who lives in LA, and we work on some animation projects together, is Jewish, and we're all roughly the same age, and we have so much in common. I'd never quite realized like how much, you know, that you know, just sort of like the tradition and like the guilt and all the things that I grew up in. So I think part of it also was growing up Catholic in Bethany, Oklahoma, being surrounded by evangelical Protestants, and to this day, not that different, honestly, you know? Yeah. So kind of always sort of feeling like an outsider. And I think a lot of, especially specifically like comedians weren't like the, you know, Kevin Bacon footloose-haired quarterback their sophomore year. They were usually the chubby dorks, you know, reading comic books and watching Doctor Who, you know. So I think there's something about that, you know, sort of feeling like an outsider. And honestly, I mean, being a straight white guy, that's about as close to being othered as I can really kind of, you know. So I feel like that's helped me in my entire life and just being a, you know, more empathetic person. I think that ties into it as well. But, you know, feeling, you know, being able to, you know, have that empathy for people who aren't straight white guys, you know, and that's a whole other conversation, you know, but yeah, I think that a lot of that had to do, you know, and I think part of that also led to my family really being close. Like I'm, you know, my brother, my sisters are my best friends, you know, because we were kind of our own little, you know, island, you know. My parents still live in the same house 46 years later, you know, and we go there, you know, we live 15 minutes away and we go there every Sunday night for dinner. And, you know, I live 500 miles away from most of my extended relatives. My boys, are 18 and 13, and they get to see both sets of grandparents, you know, every week. So another special thing.
That's special.
And that keeps me here. You know, sometimes things drive me crazy, you know, folks, you know, a few blocks from here at the Capitol making terrible decisions, you know, and pandering to folks, you know, that are many miles away, you know, but family and friends and community, you know, that's what keeps me here, and that's what keeps me, I think, evangelizing for the city, for the state, for who we have become and are still becoming. That's something that's been really important to me over the years.
I want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor, and we'll be right back. This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling an Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF. Coming back then, because growing up in Bethany, I mean, I went to SNU, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I don't live too far from there now. I've got out a little bit because of that bubble.
Yeah.
And I was coming into it from the UK, right? So totally different, with no religious background at all. So my college years were interesting.
Yes.
I only missed one golf tournament because I was caught doing something I shouldn't be doing. And that's going out and having a good time. For you listening, that's nothing else. I was having a few alcoholic beverages and I was over the age of 21. I missed one golf tournament my junior year, I think, sophomore year, one of the years. Anyway, it was irrelevant. So did you go to high school in Bethany and then on from there, or did you go?
We went to all four of us kids went to public school in the Putnam City school district, and then we all went to Mount St. Mary for high school.
Makes sense.
My parents all both went to Catholic school in St. Louis. And that was something really important to them. And so my again, my brother was a year older, and so we were kind of the new kids, in high school. But it was great. My oldest, my son Van, he's at OU in his freshman year at OU now, but he graduated from the Mountain last year, so he went there as well, and so and that's been great. I've still I've got great close friends from there. Some of them, Tony Tyler with Tyler Media. We do a bunch of stuff with Tyler. Michael Brooks Jimenez, state senator. My best friend Greg Haney's the marketing director over at the zoo. So we wind up kind of having
a really class.
Interesting class of and I'm still
in media, which is really kind of bizarre, right?
Yeah. It just kind of it's sort of funny how some things kind of shake out like that.
Yeah. So you went on to OU then after that?
Yeah.
And was the goal then to follow like design, or was it to do something totally different?
Well, honestly, like my dream was to draw comic books. Again, big comic nerd. Still read them to this day. Have written some, which is kind of lifelong dream. Fulfilled there. Realized that I didn't have the talent or patience to actually be a professional illustrator. And OU had a good visual communications program, which graphic design essentially, but I didn't really know much about it. And luckily at the time, the entry was much less stringent than it is now for programs like that. It's a lot more competitive these days. So wound up, kind of following my brother to OU, spent 4 years there, had a really great time, and that came out, and we got computers in the Viscom department the spring of my junior year. So my first 5 of 8 semesters, everything was hand done. Everything was technology that would soon be rendered obsolete. The department gets computers, but they got 2 of them for dozens of students to share. So let's say, a year and a half almost later, I had a mediocre with promise portfolio that was not quite state of the art, but luckily was good enough to kind of start me on my path from there.
So then, I know this because you've spoken previously, but you kind of navigate to a job and working in an ad agency, and then diving to that business. And then kind of, through the years, I mean, this is going to be the 20 years, right, of you being in the business. Is that right? 30 years, sorry. 30 years you being in the ad business. And there's so many great stories, that we can't talk about on the podcast from those 30 years. So people can reach out to you on Twitter, because you're a great follower on Twitter, and talk about those. But I want to fast forward those 30 years to talk about kind of, talk about Robot House, because that's why we're here. And I want to give people value, and potentially they'll learn about all the stuff that you have in this office that they would have seen or maybe drank from some of the cans that you designed. Where did Robot House start? And then fast forward, I guess, to when you kind of were like, okay, like it's just Robot House.
Started in April of 2003, about just a few weeks before my son, who's a freshman at OU, was born, and after I'd gotten. Was part of a big layoff from a formerly big agency in town, after an unfortunate series of events that led to that. Luckily, I had still have an amazing, wonderful wife who is a badass attorney, and so she had a great job and benefits, and allowed me to start my business in our living room, as she was, 8 months pregnant, which was a great benefit, because then when she was like,
it's time.
I was like, all right, I was right there, you know, and just, hit the ground that, my previous job, I wasn't doing high profile stuff. I hadn't been a member of any clubs or anything. Nobody knew who I was. That year was the hardest $12,000 I've made in my life, because I just squeezed every penny out to make it, just a little bit here, a little bit there. And got on at another agency after that first year that lasted about 5.5 years. And then end of 2009 is when I left that agency and really refocused on Robot House as a full-time thing. And at that point, I'd won some awards, got my first couple of humor awards, some other Addies, had gotten involved with Ad Club, did some adjunct teaching at Oklahoma Christian. And so that really was where I kind of realized the power of Oklahoma City, the power of us being a big, small town, and everybody being 1 degree, separated from everybody else, essentially. Because then I had a network. Then I had, people kind of cheering for me, and so so at this point, that's been over 12 years. I hired a couple of really good buddies of mine, Brett and Adam. It'll be 7 years in June that they joined Robot House. Up until then, it was me and some occasionally other friends, doing some design stuff and some other things. But that's where we really became a team, and being in our studio here in off Auto Alley, which was custom built for us by a friend slash attorney slash landlord slash client. And won't go into the Oklahoma City ways that Kyle and I know each other, but that was game changing for us. And we've been, in April, it'll be 6 years that we've been working with COOP. We're their agency of record. And so that's been really great just to see their growth. They're on a rocket ship right now with Sonic, but everything they've got going on with, the Armory building, which they're finally going to break ground on. So pretty much anything over the last 6 years, like Saturday Siren, and Fly Me Away IPA, their ID series, this past year, Ice Chest, the 99 calorie IPA that's become their number 2 seller, second to the F5, which is their signature, as well as Hook Echo, Lounge Hound Lager, Peach Pageant. So all that stuff we work with a whole bunch of different types of clients. Hideaway Pizza we've been working with for about 5 years now. We don't really. Essentially, most of our clients are local. They're all cool. We don't work with jerks. That's really our main thing is, are you the right fit for Robot House in terms of what your needs are? And are you not a jerk? I worked with too many jerks in my past lives where I wasn't the boss. I didn't own the place, and I was forced to suffer, which is, again, Catholic. It's, it's good for the soul, right? But doing my own thing, the first time I could say no to something that I knew wasn't going to be the right fit, when I knew the money wasn't going to be good enough for me to make the, to deal with what that was going
to tolerate doing it.
Yeah. That was like just, so liberating.
Yeah.
No is so liberating when you feel for so long that you have to say yes just to keep things going. So, so we work with all kinds of clients. We have been doing more in craft beer, in packaging. We've got a big craft beer focus right now. We just talked earlier today to Tabby with the Craft Beer Association, Craft Brewers Association, sorry. And we're going to be working on some branding for their Brewers Festival coming up this June. Yeah. And honestly, we're just kind of looking for, for fun stuff. We've had a lot of fun. Sunnyside Diner was a really fun early project for the three of us, and it's been fun to see them grow into 4 locations. Yeah. We just won a gold for Rail Yard Pie Company, which they opened up last year, as well as Taqueria El Camino, which is in the Edmond Rail Yard. Anything you can eat and drink tends to be more fun than...
You're just in the business of wanting free beer and free food, right?
That helps. Yeah. And honestly, it's it is pretty great when, we go and we actually still need a good coffee client. That's we haven't yet hit that threshold. We will be unveiling the rebrand for a slightly controversial coffee shop in the next couple of months. That will be hitting the news circuit.
Can't wait to see that.
So, but yeah, and that's kind of some of it is it's like. That stuff's just fun stuff that you can, you can eat and you can drink and you can experience, that's, we do really cool, fun brands for, elder law firms and things like that. We got a really great one that we're about to launch. And they were great to work with and they were super fun. Their brand's not fun, but they were fun to work with. But they were fun to work with. Yeah. And we gave them something really top notch and really awesome. And I would work with them again in a heartbeat. They were amazing. But the fun stuff, the packaging, the restaurants, the bars, anything experiential like that, that's the stuff where when I can, and especially I think in the context of Oklahoma City, adding to the iconography of the city. We designed the Pump Bar branding, and they really Ian and Haley, they took it and that was really their vision. We created something with them that really spoke to their vision for that space, and they were so crazy creative just in how they approached everything that it all just fit together. And gosh, that's been I want to say 8 years now that's been open, I think. But just to drive down 23rd and peek up Walker and see that sign. It's cool to, especially when, man, 1995, late 1995, I had a little studio apartment in Heritage East, so the easternmost block of Heritage Hills of 17th Street. $275 a month. It was an amazing, amazing deal at the time because there was nothing to do. There was nothing around, and driving down 23rd Street, and it was all a bunch of boarded up, plasma places and payday lending and the stuff that's restaurants, amazing restaurants now was like closeout hotel furniture, places. Just crap. It was awful. It was awful, and so to see the tower lit up, go to shows at Tower. My son and I saw Kamasi, Washington a week and a half before the world shut down, and it was transcendent, and to see, sort of like this, things brought back to life and then new life, and to be a part of that, when you can create something or collaborate with somebody to create something that becomes that part of local culture, that's an honor. That's cool. That's really cool. And looking back, I mean, the 30 years you've been in the business, you've grown, you've seen Oklahoma City, transform
significantly in those 30 years. Right? Like
Absolutely.
people come to Oklahoma City now and like, whoa, we have like, the park and all this other cool stuff, and there's shows and there's, all these venues and restaurants and all that, coffee shops and breweries. I mean, more than you can even,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You go to one every single day of the month pretty much. But like you said, like back, when in the 90s and early 2000s, it was, I mean, all the way through 2000s, it was really nothing. But now you've seen like, I don't know, that's kind of, it's probably really cool to just kind of have like take ownership in I've been a part of this, like I've grown up with it. That's really special.
My one of the reasons why I appreciate Oklahoma City so much is because my second job, I spent a year in Lubbock, Texas, and from June 93 through April 94, and nothing helps you appreciate the cultural riches of pre-maps Oklahoma City like a year in Lubbock, Texas.
Yes. And also the drive to Lubbock, Texas.
Oh yeah. So coming back from a year in Lubbock, away from my family, away from my friends, and that's when I was like, if I'm gonna live in Oklahoma City, I need to find what's cool. And at the time, there was Medina's coffee shop in the Paseo, and they had open mic poetry night, and it was amazing. There were amazing poets, terrible poets who were somehow even more amazing than the amazing poets, but you had to look really hard to find it. But just last year, a friend of mine that I worked with in Lubbock, I hadn't seen her since April 94.
Yeah.
So we hadn't seen each other in 27 years. She lives in Wichita Falls now. I reconnected with her, invited her and her husband up to spend the weekend. She hadn't changed. She's a grandma now. She's a year older than me. Hottest grandma you could find. Trish. I'll have to send this to Trish because she'll appreciate that. So we got together, and I gave him a tour of the city, and they were staying at Aloft and Deep Deuce, so pretty much drove through every single district. And it was so great because she said something like, she couldn't afford to live here because there's just so much to do.
Right.
And I just hearing somebody from from outside of town coming to town and say that, and it's true. And it's amazing, and so I used to ride my bike around Midtown, and everything was all boarded up, and Plaza Court was the sign was there, but there was nothing over there, and Brown's Bakery I think was, and maybe the Grateful Bean were the only things that were like still operating at the time. Deep Deuce was all just a bunch of just flattened buildings and concrete lots, I will never take for granted what we have now, because I remember when it wasn't here, and the investment that people make, not only monetarily, but also just of themselves. I mean, that's why I love, no matter how much it infuriates me sometimes, that's how much I love this place,
Yeah, it's grown on me. I've said this many times on the podcast. It's just a special place, and it's hard to explain. You've got to get people here first. And when people get here, they get it straight away. Yeah. Because like you said, there's so much opportunity of things to do every week, every night. There's multiple things to do on the weekend. You've kind of got to pick and choose, which is nice to have that choice. Shows you want to go to, places you want to go out for dinner. I mean, it's breweries you want to go to, and what, shows are at breweries now. And it is awesome. And, it's great to see and great to bring, people here and tourists here. And I'm sure we'll probably end up getting to that place where we're like, oh, we don't want people to come here because it's too many tourists. That kind of skews the opposite direction of what we've been basically doing for the last, 20, 30 years or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're mostly in Bricktown. That's
true.
Fine.
Yeah, they can stay there. That's totally fine. They can take on, sit on that boat thing.
Bricktown's
I don't think
great.
any real Oklahomans ever been on that boat. Dodging all the lime scooters and bird scooters that are in the canal. But finishing up, tell me a little bit about you probably can't talk too much about projects you have coming because they haven't been unveiled yet. But just kind of the state of the union of the business going towards, into this year, and just kind of how, things you're excited about, or I mean, just anything you want to tell us about that's coming up. This is your chance to plug whatever you want to plug.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, it's, again, anything, coming out from COOP, they're our number one. We love working with those guys. They keep us busy, and they've had so much growth that we're working with a bunch of new people over there, and they're all just really great and really creative and really smart. Marianne, the new marketing director over there, is just sharp as a tack. And so it's been that's the frustrating thing about working, in a still ongoing pandemic, honestly,
right.
Is, that we haven't had the chance to get as much FaceTime, actual literal FaceTime. We'll get on Zooms, and it's,
you guys sit across the table and have a beer and just let's talk about what we need to do.
Yeah. That's, I'm still planning on doing that with those folks soon. We don't have anything signed yet, so but we're getting close. It looks like we might be working with Skydance Brewing.
Sweet.
Jake over at Skydance has become a good friend just over the last couple of months of getting to know him, and they're 4 blocks down from us. So there are, I want to say there are 4 or 5 breweries just in walking distance from our studio, which is an amazing thing. Like I said, we're going to be working with the Craft Brewers Association for their festival. Hoping to do more. Really hoping to get on the radar of a lot of the craft brewers, in the state. Because again, beer is fun,
it's a huge industry
love
now,
to do it, and it's so local, and I'd like to think that's a benefit, for us of being, knowing the community, knowing the culture, being able to again sort of tell authentic, unique stories, whenever we have the chance to. And I mean, I always kind of feel like every brand, every business deserves great branding. Yeah. Right. I mean, we have a certain, financial threshold in terms of, who we work with, and what we can do. But, when a client can invest in us, we give it their all, so, we are I mentioned elder law firm, Richard and Associates. Richard Elder Law will be, we're very close to launching that brand, and it looks really cool. Like for an elder law firm, and Dennis Richard, I want to give him a shout out because, and he's another Mount guy, a few years older than me, so he's kind of the Winklers had their time. The Richards are have kind of they've still got some going there. But when about a year ago, I guess we had our first Zoom, and he was recommended to me. I was recommended to him, and had a really great conversation. And near the end of it, he said, and I want to tattoo this on my arm. I want to, stitch it on a pillow. Yeah. He said, I don't negotiate with experts. And you tell somebody that, and they're kind of like, what does that mean? Yeah. And so he goes, and at first I was like, oh, what does that mean? And he said, you're an expert at what you do. You become highly recommended. Your work speaks for itself. You're going to tell me how much this is going to cost, and that's what I'm going to pay. Yeah. And my heart stopped. I was like, oh my God.
Because that's never happened to you before ever, is it? And it probably won't ever happen again.
Oh yeah. Let me hit record. Please repeat that. Right. But that just to meet somebody, and especially work with somebody that has that kind of attitude. And because it has, really just in terms of culturally sort of the death of expertise, and how, graphic design and videography and photography has become so democratized because of our phones and things.
Canva.
Yeah. And so it becomes that much harder, it's not that hard to stand out from that, but it still kind of can be a hard sale, sometimes. But to meet somebody who just, has that kind of attitude about, understanding what their limits are and wanting to work with people who have spent, a lifetime, getting to where they are.
Right.
So that I'm honored by that. And again, like I may never hear that again. But that's just like right here, like that, that's a hell of a legacy. So that's where, what's next for us. It's always, every year is always different. We're never quite sure at the beginning of it, it always winds up being great. But every day of the week, of the month, of the year, I am, hitting the pavement and looking for that next cool new thing.
Happy days. That's a great way to put it, a great way to end. For people listening, how can they reach out? How can they follow you, your website, but also your Twitter account as well? Because that's just comedy.
All right. Well, robot.house is our website. Our social for Robot House is Robot House OKC. My personal is Brian with an I, Winkeler with the two E's. And again, there are two Winkelers in the phone book, me and my dad. It's a very St. Louis name. There's everybody else around here is single E Winkler.
Yes, my college roommate was a single E Winkler.
Yeah.
He went by Winkler because he was from Austria. So actually he just went by he changed his name on Facebook his name was Raymond. He changed his name on Facebook to Raymond Austria, not Raymond Winkler, because no one knew how. He's like, I'm just the Austrian guy. It's fine. Yeah. So that was kind of fun.
So Brian Winkeler on Twitter. Yeah. It is occasionally not safe for work. I do let my politics, influence my content.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, I just like to share stuff that I love and occasionally try and be moderately witty. So I play Wordle, but I'm not posting my Wordle scores every day, so I try and make the content a little bit more unique than that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, mate. It's been good to catch up.
Yeah.
It's good to hear some awesome stories on the podcast and off the podcast. Sorry, guys. And I'll post the links for people listening in the description. They go check that stuff out, and definitely check out the cans that you've done for COOP and all the other awesome projects. Look out for some stuff hopefully coming with Jake and this. I can't wait to see this law firm, the Elder law firm stuff that's going to come out, because you've hyped it up now. It should be awesome.
Yeah.
So for people listening, I'll post all the links in the description, and we will catch you next episode. Cheers.
Thanks, bye.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.